Besides main roles in the third part, Sylvester Stallone was also the scriptwriter and director. Preparing for filming, Sly almost immediately began to observe strict diet and exercise regimen. Even though the original cast quickly agreed to a sequel, casting for the role of Lang turned out to be complex, to different moments connected to the project. Real boxers, Joe Frazier and Ernie Shavers. In total, more than 1,200 people auditioned for the role of Clubber Lang. Frazier and Shavers were both about the same height like Sylvester Stallone, and had a powerful physique like Rocky, but according to casting directors, Frazier had a stuttering problem at the time. Like the Black Destroyer had a high voice, which would look ridiculous on such a formidable character. Interesting fact about Shavers, the boxer came to try out to spar with Stallone, having received instructions from him do not hit the actor. Stallone for minutes he wooed Shavers from all sides, but he endured. But in the end, Shavers not withstood and hit Stallone under the ribs. He bent over in pain and with the help of only assistants silently left the ring. Stallone will then say,
"He almost killed me, then I left in men's toilet and me vomited there."
As a result, Shavers did not get the role. Sylvester Stallone, in search of history and inspiration for Part 3, attended Leon Spinks' boxing match in his title fight against the legendary Muhammad Ali in 1978. When he wanted to go to Spinks' corner during the break and cheer him up, Mr. T was the boxer's guard.
"I just didn't let him in. If Leon didn't say to me that Stallone will come, I'm not going to let him in. Person, let it be a star like Stallone."
Sly subsequently respected Mr. T for such an act. And then 2 years later he saw Mr. T competes in a competition for the Coolest Bouncer America, and then Sylvester decided that this guy would be the ideal opponent for Rocky Balboa in his next film, but the casting directors were unhappy. Those like Mr. T showed yourself at the auditions. They even tried to send him to a crash course in acting school, but Stallone intervened just in time.
Во! Во! Вот тебе!
In his opinion, if a person goes through acting school, he will lose all his natural charm and charisma. For Mr. T himself became a real breakthrough. He immediately established himself as a serious-minded person to work. By the way, Morgan Freeman auditioned for the role of Clubber Lang's trainer. In preparation for the film, Stallone claims that his body fat percentage dropped to an all-time low level, 2.6%, and weighed 70 kilograms, so that you understand, the usual a person has a fat percentage of 18 to 20%, and the owner in those days title, Mr. Olympia, about 4%. Sylvester stated that he only ate 10 egg whites and a slice of toast one day in advance, sometimes washed down with fresh juice, and his training consisted of the following: 4 kilometers jogging in the morning, after which was followed 2 hours of strength training, then a nap in the afternoon, and another 18 rounds of sparring, and at the end of the day, another strength training and swimming. As in the first 2 films, Sylvester Stallone included biographical elements from your own life into the Rocky story. In particular, he decided to concentrate on the star aspects of Rocky's life and how he broke away from the normality of ordinary life. When creating this film, Stallone was at the peak of his fame, and a big part of the excessive popularity that Rocky experienced was based on Stallone's life experiences. The Hulk Hogan fight scene was filmed over 10 days. The huge difference in height between the rivals in the film was not exaggerated. Stallone's height is 178 centimeters and Hogan's height is 193 centimeters. Sylvester Stallone hired a stunt double to play his hero thrown out of the ring by Hulk Hogan. Frank Stallone wanted to do this stunt, but Sly considered it too dangerous, and trusted only a professional stuntman. Hulk Hogan was relatively unknown outside of the wrestling world, and by the way, he was fired for his participation in the film. Just the wrestler violated his contract, moving away from the planned matches, and all this in order to film his scenes in the third Rocky. Sylvester Stallone admitted that after the second part of Rocky he ran out of ideas for a sequel. That's why this movie and Rocky IV are more focused on wrestling and training, while in the first 2 the films were more about the character himself than just boxing. Stallone admitted that he drank 25 cups of coffee a day during the making of this film. As you remember, Apollo lost in the first Rocky because he underestimated enemy about which he didn't know anything. Now Rocky commits the same mistake, only with the clubber. This is the only Rocky movie in which Rocky loses knockout fight. According to Mr. T's interview, he attended the film's premiere with his mother, and during the scene when he yells at Adrian, his mother turned to and said to him,
"I didn't raise you like that, for you to talk like this way with this lady."
Then she got up and left from the hall. The third part is Carl Weathers' favorite film in the Rocky saga, because the actor believed that Apollo Creed was portrayed well in it as a person. While creating the tape bronze statue designed by Thomas Schomburg was located at the top of the famous staircase Philadelphia Museum of Art. After filming was completed, Sylvester Stallone tried to donate the statue to the museum, but the staff of the institution they said they didn't want it, and this caused huge controversy between the museum and the City Art Commission about what art is. Museum claimed that the statue was nothing more than a movie prop, and didn't see anything directly artistic in it, but the local residents were outraged by this decision, and the statue was eventually erected. To create the Rocky statue took 7.5 months, and the work went on for 16 hours a day. From the Rocky films that are shown officially, the boxing match at the end of the film, Rocky III, is the only one that shows the entire fight without jumping through the rounds. And Part 3 is considered a favorite movie in the Rocky fan community. According to Sylvester Stallone, Mr. T and Carl Weathers didn't get along on set. This can be seen during scenes when Apollo approaches Lang's corner and tries to shake his hand. Lang hits his hand and provokes him to the conflict. As they say, a few minutes before the action command, the couple had an argument on the set. Even though the film came out 6 years after original, the story takes place just across 4 years after the first part. Rocky introduced a 30-year-old fighter in the first fight against Apollo Creed, and in a fight with Clubber Lang he is 34. This is connected with the fact that the film takes place 3 years later after the second Rocky II. Only in this film and in Rocky IV, the main character does not climb the famous steps Philadelphia Museum during training, even though they are shown in the film. When Rocky and Apollo are about to fight at the end, Rocky says,
"Please, old people, we have honor."
Whatever you want, Stallion.
In real life, Carl Weathers is 2 years younger than Sylvester Stallone. The film received generally mixed reviews, with praise for its combat episodes and music, but the script was criticized, and some critics considered the film completely unnecessary. On a budget in $17 million world box office, Rocky III amounted to 270, and surpassing its predecessors. It became the highest-grossing film in the franchise at that time. Interesting fact, this was supposed to be the last Rocky film. However, due to box office success of the film, Sylvester Stallone decided to continue the franchise. Development on the fourth film began soon after the success of the threequel, but Rocky IV faced controversy after a copyright lawsuit was filed. Timothy Burton Anderson, author who wrote script for the film, filed a lawsuit for copyright infringement rights, unfair competition, unfair enrichment and breach of trust against Stallone, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer and other parties. The case was eventually settled in confidence out-of-court settlement. This was the last film that Sylvester Stallone took off before Rocky Balboa. The break in directing was 23 years old. More than 8,000 people auditioned for the role of Ivan Drago. Interestingly, Dolph Lundgren was initially rejected by casting directors for that, what he was too tall, but later it became possible to send your photos and meet in person with Stallone, who said him that he has a good chance of getting the role but advised to him gain 8 kilograms of muscle. In total, Lundgren it took several months to get role. Although Rocky IV was a breakthrough role for the actor, this was not his first appearance on the big screen. Dolph played a small role in the James Bond film A View to a Kill as one of General Gogol's bodyguards. Stallone and Lundgren agreed on real punches in boxing battle to add realism to the franchise, but good from this little came of it. Lundgren injured Sly. That Sly was delivered by plane from the filming site straight to the hospital, where he was sent to intensive care for 8 days. Stallone would later say that his colleague had such athletic ability and talent that he could fight in professional heavyweight boxing.
Stallone really ended up in the hospital, but I don't know if it was a consequence of my punches, or the fact that he was so overloaded work as a director, actor and screenwriter. We were filming these 15 rounds over 2 or 3 weeks, according to 8 or 12 hours a day, so we were doing thousands hitting each other.
However, producer Irwin Winkler, describing the same event in his autobiography, stated what a blow did not cause Lundgren and his understudy, and added that Stallone turned out to be in the emergency department with dangerously high blood pressure, but still after total higher. That said, almost all the blows between Rocky and Drago missed their target, and most of them are at a distance, in some cases. The one who receives the blow moves his head for a long time before these strikes reach their target. In principle, of course, it already looks better than in the first part. With his strong hook, Lundgren, by the way, almost forced Carl Weathers to leave the project. This happened during filming the Apollo vs. Drago fight. At one point Lundgren sent Weathers away with a punch in the corner of the boxing ring. Weathers, shouting his displeasure addressed to Dolph, left the ring and stated, "What will call to his agent and will leave the picture." It was only after Stallone forced the two actors to reconcile that filming continued. The incident caused a 4-day production shutdown, after which Weathers was persuaded to return to the site, and Lundgren agreed reduce your aggressiveness. But in a recent interview, Dolph disputed this information. The actor will say that he never had any problems with Weathers, but he felt that Carl might feared him because of his actual training as a master martial arts. However, Lundgren did not dispute the fact that Weathers left the set though once during the filming of their fight, having seen how previous opponents behaved Rocky, particularly Apollo Creed and Clubber Lang. Dolph Lundgren wanted to show his character very calm, who wouldn't move too much, wasn't that expressive. In particular, he wanted to emphasize in the hero's frightening gaze. Sylvester Stallone supported this idea. And as a result, Ivan Drago doesn't have many lines anymore, and in basically it was only shown in close-ups, emphasizing more eyes. The film was created during a particularly tense era of the Cold War. Producer Bob Chartoff described Drago as an invincible enemy, personifying everything what do Americans fear from the Soviet Union. Meanwhile, Dolph said that he feels sympathy to Drago, whom he sees as an exploited tool. Intrigues of politicians and military men, seeking to promote their own interests through him. In fact, Soviet heavyweights were not allowed then box with professional fighters during the Cold War. At a press conference about the fight Drago vs. Creed, Drago wears the uniform of the Soviet Army. He has the rank of captain and he was awarded the Hero Medal Soviet Union. This is the highest degree of distinction in the USSR, which was awarded for performing a feat or outstanding achievements during combat operations, as well as in peacetime. In the 70s and early 80s it was common for especially gifted boxers, powerlifters, who were recruited as soldiers. These exceptional athletes were assigned nutritionists and were accompanied scientific teams to maintain high standards. Like Ivan in the film, Drago is not a Russian surname, but a South Slavic one, for example, Serbian or Slovenian, and means deer. As surnames are sometimes found in the USA and may have different roots, the character was created directly after a real-life champion, Germany heavyweight champion and former paratrooper German Air Force to Max Schmeling. Just like his fictional counterpart later in the film, Schmeling abandoned the use as political propaganda. A fight between Rocky and Drago was inspired by the Joe Louis vs. Max match Schmeling during the Second World War. The only one the difference is that this is the cold version war. Even if Drago had won the fight with Rocky, he would not have considered a hero. He would have been brought to justice for insulting the Pain Bureau. Unlike Apollo Creed and Clubber Lang, Ivan Drago is the only opponent who was defeated. Rocky Balboa in his first boxing match, Soviet Prime Minister, located during the match Rocky vs. Drago, played by David Lloyd Austin, reminds of Mikhail Gorbachev. Interesting fact, but Austin later played Gorbachev in The Naked Gun. The film received mixed to negative reviews with criticism for the predictable script and Cold War themes, that some critics considered it propaganda and promoting negative images of Russians. However, the antagonist Drago was praised as a villain, and the film was a box office success, grossing $300 million worldwide, becoming the highest-grossing film ever in the franchise. Rocky IV is one of the few sports films in which real sound effects are used. Blows recognized that the film was ahead of its time in its presentation, innovative high-tech sports equipment, some of which were experimental at that time and was not available to the general public for about 20 years. In 2012, Olympians Michael Phelps and Ryan Lochte noted that the training sequences in Rocky IV inspired their use similar the one which the resourceful Balboa used in the film. The director's version of the film was released in 2021. Generally about 38 minutes of previously unsaid was added to the film material, including significant expansions of both fight scenes. So is the funeral of Apollo Creed, but also significant amount of footage was removed, and therefore the director's cut runs 93 minutes compared to 91 minutes of the original version. Before the fight, The USSR anthem is played from 1943 to 1955, although the plot of the film takes place in 1985 year, an American boxer is sent to train in a small town called Krasnogorsk, which actually does not exist. Tony Burton, who has a short scene in this film, playing chess against a Russian opponent, is an experienced chess player in real life. One day defeating avid chess player and director Stanley Kubrick, on the set of the film, The Shining, Brigitte Nielsen, who played Ivan Drago's wife Lyudmila in the film, married Sylvester Stallone in real life in December 1985, after the film's premiere, but divorced him a year and a half later in July 1987. None of the actors who played Russian characters not as Russian, Dolph Lundgren, Swede, Brigitte Nielsen is Danish, and the others are American, all Soviet. The scenes were of course filmed in America. According to Sylvester Stallone, when Michael Pataki auditioned for the role of Nikolai Koloff, Stallone thought Pataki really Russian because of his convincing accent. Rocky's iconic speech after his fight with Drago was improvised. Carl Weathers and Brigitte Nielsen would later appear in the musical clip Michael Jackson's Liberian Girl video with such celebrities as like John Travolta, Richard Dreyfuss, Whoopi Goldberg, Weird Al Yankovic and many others. Stallone said one of his biggest regrets was this movie was about the murder of the character Apollo Creed, due to the need to give Rocky motivation to train and defeat Drago. In recent interviews he said that if he could make the film again, he would just put Apollo in a wheelchair. Main character arc Rocky is that he is riddled with guilt for that he didn't quit Tao and didn't save his friend's life. However, quite it probably wouldn't matter anyway. As seen shortly before Drago strikes the fatal blow that kills Apollo, the judge tries intervene only to push Drago aside, but his attack was so furious what even if Rocky had quit in time a Tao, more like in all, the referee would not have been able to stop the onslaught in time Drago to save Apollo. If Drago's punching power were actually real, Rocky would get hit with an overload of 80J every time. In other words, one or two blows of such force may have killed Rocky would instantly. For an ordinary person, overload from 8G is already fatal. Prepared people can handle a maximum of 12. The astronauts in the descent module endure quite long-term overloads of 3 to 4G. Withstand this. Not everyone can take the test, even those who are prepared cosmonaut, because as you know people get into the space squad only pilots who have passed complex tests and tough selection. Formula 1 drivers during racing experiences more than 1000 overloads from 4 to 6G. The temperature in the car's cabin rises during the race up to 50 degrees Celsius. Formula 1 driver for one pass due to lost fluid may lose 3 to 4 kilograms. Rocky IV is considered a pop culture icon of the 1980s, with a director's cut released in 2021 under title Rocky IV, Rocky vs. Drago. In the original script, Rocky dies during final fight with Tommy Gunn and dies in his arms at Adrian's on the street. For most parts of filming this is how it was planned, and only when the film was close to completion, Stallone opposed the death of his character and chose different ending. According to him, the director and studio had ideas about this other thoughts. In the end, Stallone rewrote the ending deciding that Rocky is a frenzy about perseverance and redemption, and Rocky dying in a street fight would go against the Spirit series, famous red, white and blue boxer briefs, for the first time worn by Apollo Creed in his fight with Rocky in the first film, appear again in this film. In the sixth part they were not shown, but in the seventh and eighth he wears them in a renewed form. The son of Apollo. In one interview, Sylvester Stallone was asked to evaluate each film in the Rocky franchise and give it a rating from 0 to 10. The actor gave the fifth Rocky 0 points. In another interview in 2010, Sly would add that he took off painting for money. Sylvester Stallone's fee for the first Rocky film was $23,000. In the fifth film he was already paid $15 million. This is the second film directed by John G. Avildsen, who was poorly received at the box office and was also poorly received by film critics, and the first was Karate Guy 3. Evander Holyfield was offered a role in the film, but he turned it down from the role, because he didn't want to lose, let him even in feature films. At that time Holyfield was undefeated boxer, but 2 years after the release of the picture, Holyfield was the first once Roddick Bowe loses. This is the only film in the Rocky saga that doesn't paid off at the box office and barely broke even. Don't forget that from 2 to 15% of the fees are taken by the distributor, the company, and takes half of the remaining amount itself. A cinema, with a budget of $42 million, worldwide box office receipts amounted to 120, in response to poor box office of the fifth Rocky, and general dissatisfaction with the End franchise. 16 years later Stallone wrote script, directed the film and starred in new film called Rocky Balboa. And it will be the 6th chapter of the saga. Then a spin-off will be released, the Creed trilogy. Son of Apollo Creed will try herself in the professional ring. Sly of course will also appear.